The King of Fighters 94 is a fair introduction to the KOF series, and having to fully analyze it was undoubtedly a fun experience for this review. It did come with its fair share of annoyances though, mainly with the computer opponents, and that is mostly what this review is going to be about, and a review solely on the KOF 94 arcade game. You see, arcade fighting games are my prescription sandwiches.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more
fighting games. But what can really ruin the experience is when developers program the CPU opponents to cheat. It's what they do to make players waste more money on extra continues. Ooh! Ah!
Get the hell out of here!
Oh, fuck! What? I hit the fucking button first!
What more do you want from me?
Douche! Did you just call me a douche? Now this is something I gotta analyze with every fighting game because it's important to know if the developers program the CPU opponents to cheat in order to make players waste more money on trying again and again, and depending on their programming, they could become the right amount of challenge, or they could be completely broken, leaving you no other choice but to find a loophole that the AI apparently cannot counter. It could be as simple as spamming a weak jump kick, or in tougher cases you'll need precise timing to attack the moment the AI performs a projectile move. But sometimes this might not even be enough. If you look at the computer opponent in the other arcade games such as Mortal Kombat 2, you'll see that the computer opponent can be too broken, and it doesn't matter how much practice you get. If they can automatically counter everything you do, or worse, by cheating and using less frames for their attacks, they'll even spam projectiles at a rate that cannot possibly be executed by the players. With King of Fighters 94, it's somewhat in between. It is smart enough to try a different pattern of moves, except for the final boss, luckily. I'll get to him in a bit. One thing the computer opponents will always have as an advantage is pulling off the desperation moves with ease. I can maybe pull them off after 5 or more attempts. Maybe. Just depending on the character I'm playing as. I wish the desperation moves weren't so difficult to pull off. Because I mean, most arcade fighting games, they do have special moves and ultimates that require a lot of inputs, but I think they went a little overboard with the command inputs in this game. You can practice all you want, but chances are you'll only manage to pull off the desperation moves for only 1 or 2 characters on each team. Damn it. It's so difficult to pull off in midair. Ah, damn. Got him. What? That didn't work? Do that, and this, you hold back, and then, como voy a hacer eso? No, hombre. Since this was the first KOF game, there was bound to be a few annoyances. One being the complicated inputs of most desperation moves, another being that you cannot choose characters separately. You have to choose a team that consists of 3 characters without manually choosing characters to create your own team. But you know what? As much as it would have been great to edit your teams, I think it's okay the way it is here because it gives us an experience of seeing all these crossover characters competing in this tournament. So naturally they have to team up with the fighters from their own franchise, right? And since the next KOF games did allow the players to edit their teams, it felt like a whole new edit experience now that characters are familiarized with one another after the previous tournament. The women's team is the only team that consists of characters from Fatal Fury and The Art of Fighting, so it's pretty much the only team that lets you play as crossover characters. There are 8 teams to choose from. The USA Sports team consists of Heavy D, Lucky Glover, and Brian Badler. The Brazil Ikari team consists of Heidern, Ralph Jones, and Clark Still. The China Psycho Soldier team consists of Athena, Asamiya, Sie Kensuo, and Chin Gensai. Chin. The England women's team consists of King, Mai Shiranui, and Yuri Sakazaki. The Italy Fatal Fury team consists of Terry Bogard, Andy Bogard, and Joe Higashi. The Japan Hero team consists of Kyo Kusanagi, Benimaru Nikaido, and Goro Daimon. The Korea Justice team consists of Kim Kafwan, Cheng Gohan, and Choi Bound, And the Mexico Art of Fighting team consists of Ryo Sakazaki, Robert Garcia, and Takuma Sakazaki. I'm not sure if all characters actually represent the regions they're displayed as. I'm guessing they did this to sort of give them all their own stages. But it really looks like they did this because Street Fighter 2 did it, and we all know how Street Fighter 2 was the main influence and motivation for most arcade fighting games at the time. I won't be mentioning character biographies with this review since it's best to give each character their own deep analysis video, I'd say, and how they change over each new installment of the series. But I will give a short description of what my experience was like with these teams. The sports team was sort of bland. I didn't really get into those. I thought the Fatal Fury team would be my favorite, but their desperation moves are nearly impossible to pull off last minute. The inputs look like cheat codes. Even when Andy's desperation move only requires doing this, I can never get it to work. Not to mention, if you're playing against the CPU and you're holding down back to try and pull this off, the CPU will never allow itself to get hit. Not by a move that starts off that way. It can see this move coming from a mile away because in order to land a desperation move, you need to trick the CPU into thinking you're wide open. Like jumping and kicking right as your character is about to touch the floor, followed up by immediately executing that desperation move. But aside from that, the best unique thing about the Fatal Fury team would have to be...
You can make me do the duck walk! Cool, huh?
The Korean team is like the misfit team. You got Kim Kafwan, the team leader, Taekwondo master. Nobody messes with the Kafwan. This dude is my reason to pick the Korean team every time. Chang Kohan, he's the team lineman. Use him for that wide basic attack, including strong jabs to keep opponents at a distance. Choi over here is the young grasshopper. He's a Freddy Krueger reference, of course, but he is useful for overhead attacks and great at keeping a distance to run the clock. The Ikari Warriors team has got the best grapplers in the game, and a leader with a long reach of both attacks and leaps. The Art of Fighting team is the one you're going to want to practice a lot with. They're the only team I can rely on to reach the final boss of the game. The one team that always prevents me from reaching the final boss is the Hero team, especially if they're the last team to deal with. Now, the Art of Fighting characters can perform a super special move that dealt a great amount of damage in their series. But here, it's worse than Dan's Hadouken from Street Fighter. I don't know why, but what's the point of including the Hwashokoken if a simple basic attack is more effective? The women's team consists of Yuri Sakazaki and King from the Art of Fighting series, and Mai Shiranui from the Fatal Fury series. Mai has a long reach and can wall jump, and can also do the duck walk. Yuri can also pull off the Hwashokoken, but what really stands out when it comes to King and Yuri is that they each have a unique KO animation when it comes to being taken down with a special attack. This is something that would happen in the Art of Fighting series, so it's a pretty cool addition to this tournament. Wouldn't you say? Now let's talk about the stages. Most of these stages are very creative. The pixel art is gorgeous in its classic style. My favorite ones would have to be the Japan, Korea, USA, and Mexico stages. The Japan stage takes place in a city, but in the middle of a highway. There are many people spectating the fight, even a cat in the far right. Ironically, this kind of represents 2020 and how highways were blocked like this, but with protesters instead. The Korea stage is beautifully displayed. I love the rain effects. The fact that it takes place at night is also an added bonus. The stage introduction has lightning striking close by, just making it even more intense as the fight is about to begin. I love that. The USA stage has this mellow scenery with a sunset and the city displayed in the far back. There's like 8 critters spectating the fight. One of them is even dancing. A little dancing. The arena is this aged up boxing ring which is on the surface of a street basketball court. Yeah, it definitely feels like New York. And you know what? Seeing these buildings in the back just makes you feel like you're right back in the early 90s. Like you're able to just experience that era once again, just by using your imagination as you pummel your opponent in front of these spectating animals, the hoodlums, Cheech, a crackhead, and the guy who flashed Phyllis. The Mexico stage has so many cameos in the background. It's undoubtedly the highlight of this stage. I pointed them all out in a separate video called 10 Awesome Facts on KOF 94, so if you're interested, I'll recommend it with the end screen annotations for you guys. Also, here's a clip of the cameos in this stage. In the left side of the crowd, we see Lee Pailong, Mickey Rogers, and Temjin from Art of Fighting. Now, in the right side of the crowd, we got Billy Kane next to Lily McGuire from the Fatal Fury OVA, Geese Howard, and Richard Meyer from Fatal Fury. Richard Meyer is also the owner of the Pow Pow Cafe they're in. Then there's Ryuhaku Toro, Eiji Kisaragi from Art of Fighting, Rhodey and Kathy from Top Hunter, and in the center we got Banda Machos. Now I'm kidding, that's just a mariachi band. You know what's weird? In the Brazil stage, there's a villager not wearing anything and his butt's covered by a leaf or tree branch. But if you lose, you can see the background of the stage during the continue countdown, and that branch is no longer there. I'm guessing they censored it, but forgot that the same villager also appears in the countdown screen if you lose. Besides that, this stage looks pretty creative since it feels like you're in the same jungle where the predator lurks nearby. Wouldn't it have been amazing to just have like the predator's eyes glowing for a few frames as if he was spectating the fight in his camouflage? Either way, it's an alright looking stage. The China stage looks gorgeous, makes you want to visit these locations. I'm pretty sure this has to be a real place since most game locations are taken from real existing locations. I love how the mountains are barely visible in the back, there's this mountain trail to the far left, and it's also a neat touch seeing Athena, Chin, and Cie's luggage in the center of the stage. Must mean that this isn't their home, but a location they're visiting. The England and Italy stages are not bad either, but probably the most generic looking when compared to the rest of the stages, mainly because of the locations they represent. They still look colorful and exciting though, so it's not too bad. The Italy stage even includes additional cameos. Here's another clip of that awesome facts video to point them out. These characters are Chen, Big Bear, Tung Fu, Duck King, and Jubei Yamada. So every stage is not only appealing to look at, as most of them are accompanied by a captivating theme song. You can't deny that this game has some catchy ass songs. Some of them are so iconic that they've been remixed countless times and included in further installments of the franchise. So we definitely owe it to the composers of this game for giving us some of the best tracks that would never be forgotten. Alright, so we covered the gameplay, the music, the stages, and now we must talk about the difficulty. So after countless playthroughs against the AI in the normal difficulty, I managed to discover the weaknesses for some of these, for each of the characters of the game. For this game, I recommend sticking to the normal difficulty, which is apparently set to 3 out of 8 on the difficulty levels. In the harder difficulties, or as you progress in the normal difficulty, the computer opponents are programmed to instantly counter most commands executed by the player. So they'll even block just about everything that you throw at them. They can automatically throw your character, and it's even worse when the AI cheats and uses less frames to execute its own commands. So if the AI wants to play by its own rules just to have an advantage against us human, well, then let's bring out the cheat sheet and reveal their robotic weaknesses. I'm looking at you, Rugal and Kyo Kusanagi.
You reap what you sow.
So now, it's time to expose every weakness I could find in openings that would allow for a critical hit that the CPU would never forget, nor be programmed to counterattack. Let's start with the following characters: Terry, Andy, Mai, King, Lucky Glauber, Brian Badler, and Kim. These 7 characters share similar attack patterns, and they can be defeated by the same tactic. The best strategy I found was to dodge their projectile attacks first. Doing so will lower their defenses, and they'll walk towards you. That's when you strike with pokes or throw the opponent when they're close enough. I recommend using the women's team since Mai and King have a long-range jab poke, and it feels like they can throw their opponents from a slightly further distance rather than being up close to the opponent, especially with Mai. Another strategy I found to be very useful was by using the Ikari team and performing their grab specials every time the opponent approaches you. So just dodge projectiles and either jab at the approaching fighter, grab or throw the douche. Now let's move on to the Art of Fighting members. That includes Ryo, Robert, Takuma, and Yuri. These characters will always perform their Haoshi Koken, which leaves them wide open for a brutal beatdown. So stay at a close enough distance, wait for them to perform that special, just jump over it and get creative with that opening. Next is Joe Higashi. This is an easy one, just dodge his projectiles, wait for him to perform that slash kick, block and throw him. That's it. Repeat this process and you'll win without a problem. The Ikari team is a bit challenging. For Clark, I bait him into jumping forward with a projectile so I can land an uppercut while he's in midair. Depending on your character, you might get hit as well, but you'll end up dealing more damage on him than he'll deal on you. For Ralph, keep a distance and use slow projectiles which will surprisingly land on him since he tries jumping forward and it'll hit him by the time it reaches halfway the screen, or he'll just walk towards him. Light attacks are basically his weakness. For Hydern, this one's a challenge since he has his long-range sweep attack that he'll execute mostly every time you dodge or block his cross-cut projectile. So what's best is to perfectly time his projectiles so you can jump over them and attack him while he's open. You can also try to anticipate when he's jumping forward with that special attack and kick him before he reaches your character. On to Athena's team. To defeat Sie, it's the same tactic as with Joe Higashi. Wait for him to perform his dashing special, block and throw, rinse and repeat. Athena is a bit tricky. You can easily sweep her after blocking her Phoenix Arrow, but she doesn't perform it constantly. What she will do is lower her defense if you dodge her projectiles, and that allows for some pokes and special moves to land. You can also use projectiles since sometimes her reflecting special does not work and she ends up taking damage instead. Shin Genzai is also a bit tricky. Keep a distance and try to make him use his long-range jug attack. You can get him to pull it off by jabbing, so perform a quick jab, then immediately fire a fast projectile at him. Doing this will make it land after he performs it, trying to block your jab with it.
Alright, the easiest of the team. I'm gonna say it again and again, because it's the fucking truth.
The hero team is probably the most challenging of them all. I recommend once again sticking with the Mexico team, aka the Art of Fighting team. Robert is capable of defeating them all by spamming that midair special kick. I literally couldn't find any other characters that could defeat this team if it's one of the last two teams you gotta deal with before facing off against the boss. Robert and Rio's midair attack spam will slowly drain the opponent's health as they take block damage. It's unfortunate, but that is what we must do in order to win by time limit. But I couldn't find shit that wasn't easily countered by Kyo Kusanagi. That clown douche belongs with MK2's CPU. It's unbelievably cheap. But hey, it's a weakness nonetheless. Like most traditional arcade fighters, you'll have to beat the final boss twice. This game's final boss is Rugal Bernstein, or Bernstein. Not sure how it's meant to be pronounced. I'll just wait for the Mandela effect to correct me on this one. Now, in his first fight, he won't use projectiles, which is great, and the best strategy is to back your character against the wall, make him believe that he's cornered a defenseless white belt, and once he gets close enough, strike him down repeatedly by pokes.
Ora, ora. I'm gonna go Super Saiyan, bro. Come on. Ora, wait. Woo! Oh, I landed nothing. Psycho. 3, 2, 1. Ah, oh, good.
In his second fight, Rugal can be a pain in the rectum, but
Not anymore.
like your typical arcade fighting boss, he'll spam projectiles, automatically counter any oncoming attacks, and deal far too much damage even with basic attacks. He can eliminate you with as low as 2 to 3 hits.
Lightwood lemonade. Oh, damn it. Damn, look at that fucking damage. My god, dude. You barely hit me once.
So you have to fully analyze everything about the final boss's movements, attack patterns, and for any openings if you plan on beating him. The only opening that you get is when he's charging up his key. You can deplete his energy bar by taunting, and in order to taunt in this game, you have to press a strong button far away from the opponent. Isn't that a weird command? But if you can pull it off, he'll most likely hit you with a projectile or slide into your DMs with a stiff arm. So I don't recommend that strategy. Not anymore. Because tonight, I'm gonna yeet the motherfucker. Chances are that you will always win the fight thanks to the time limit instead of a knockout, but when you're going up against a cheap-ass boss like this, you can't always expect to knock him out. Just be patient and outsmart him. After all, you only gotta wait for a minute repeating this dodge and yeet tactic, and you'll instantly be declared winner of the King of Fighters 94. No. 20 seconds left. No, don't do that. Stop it. I could stop it. Yeah, I could actually stop it, but dude, like that moment.
Right? He was just about to.
Fight.
Oh, Freddy! You got this.
Oh no!
Oh.
He's like, no. Do it again. Do it again, dude. Do it again. And that one. A little look. Shake. That's right. Do it again. Do it again. There you go. Step. Come on. Oh my god. 20 seconds. Come on. Gotcha, man. Oh god. 9 seconds. Get back. Yeah, that's right. Won by time limit. To make him drop his guard every time. Wait, get back.
What the damage? That was nothing. Come on, game. I want to at least knock him out. Did you hear that? It was like a slap.
Time up. Rugal, fight.
Oh. Let me go that way. Ooh. Come on, I could beat you. Just... Oh, fuck. I was trying to knock him out before the time limit, but... win's a win. Nice. I like that. Every time he beat someone, he always looked at that photo. Overall, this game is awesome. It was a fun enough experience for being the first King of Fighters game in the series. Graphics are okay, background music is awesome and memorable. Controls aren't great. If you try using an arcade controller, half the time when you want to jump forward or backwards, your character will jump straight up instead, and then forwards or backwards, making you switch back to a regular PlayStation controller, or whatever console you were playing it on. Most desperation moves are impossible to pull off. My Shiranui has this simple command, but since you press high punch and low kick at the same time, it's a little complicated since you need to shift your right hand so you can press both buttons at the same time. But by holding the controller in this awkward way, you leave your character wide open for abuse since you're not used to playing with the controller this way. And your opponent will most likely land a hit or two since you put yourself at a disadvantage. What makes desperation moves worse is that the AI will always block or sidestep away from them every time you execute them. And it doesn't help that some special moves and desperation moves aren't executed even when you input the exact commands needed to pull them off. Again, they did improve on this for the later games, so it's very noticeable here. But what I did like was that if your opponent performs a certain grab attack or your character happens to be dizzy, you can have a teammate interfere if you're closer to them, which is awesome. But it won't work if your teammates have both been defeated. Oh, fuck. Yeah, Mai to the rescue. I also love that your teammates are shown in the background reacting to everything that's going on during the fight. It may not sound like a big deal, but this is one of those small things that truly makes a difference in the presentation of a fight.
Oh my god! Oh jeez! Oh my god! Oh,
they react if you get hit, if you land a hit, if you lose, if you win. It's just cool to see these multiple reactions because it displays a little of their personalities, especially when they lose and show how they're downright upset. Now, one of the biggest problems for me is not having that dodge roll. This isn't technically a problem in the game, as many arcade fighting games don't have a dodge roll, but if you ended up playing one of the KOF games that did include that dodge roll, then you're really going to be missing it here. Characters will lean out of the way instead of rolling out of the way. It's not too bad, in fact it actually becomes rather useful when taking on the final boss of the game, but since you're dodging in place, you don't really get that chance to counter immediately. The gameplay speed feels similar to the Street Fighter 2's gameplay speed, so it's a bit slow, but not enough to ruin a good fight. There's not much of a story when it comes to this tournament. The team endings are really short and they aren't much in terms of storytelling or character development, but I guess they're like any other arcade fighting game ending. Final boss blows up the place, your team escapes, and they mention what they were fighting for. And that's King of Fighters 94. After completing the arcade mode so many times, I can't wait to dive straight into KOF 95. I hope the AI opponents have been programmed to be fair and not a bigger advantage like with the final boss. So I'm pretty sure they must have fixed that, right? Right? Hello, stranger. Welcome to the ScorePN. We've got the iconic grin as well as the new lime green logo in store for you. And for a limited time, you can purchase the Yuri vs. Joe knockout item. It's available as a t-shirt including stickers, all for a very low price. This one's based on the Resident Evil 3 mobile game called Resident Evil The Missions. And this one I like to call the Jill Manwich. It's my blend of the two things I love in this world, Jill and memes. And don't worry about the prices. They're as low as they can be. Yep, I'm barely making any profit. But, the important thing is that you don't need to spend too much to look good in the groovy lime green logo. So get yourself a Jill Manwich t-shirt or any of these luxurious and spunky designs. And wear them with pride.
Yeah, wear 'em with pride.
Trust me, anyone sees you wearing one of these and they'll immediately think, which translates to,
This guy. This is my kind of guy.
now over at my Patreon, I'm working on some secret projects. So if you'd like to have access to some of these never before seen videos, including updates and concept art from a comic book I'm working on based on Resident Evil Outbreak, then my Patreon's got you covered. I'll be updating everyone there with exclusive videos and newer art panels so you can see how far that project progresses over time. It's going to be the first comic book I create and I'm putting as much effort as I can into it, so I do feel confident about that project alone. You might also be glad to know that I've started narrating the S.D. Perry novel of Resident Evil The Umbrella Conspiracy as part of the Patreon exclusives, and there will be a new video based on each chapter every week. So don't miss out on any of these, my fellow jabronis. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it all the way through. Click the like button if you think the video was better than your ex. And hit the subscribe button, but only if you're turning on notifications, because otherwise you'll only be notified like once a year. Also be sure to check out my other videos not related to Resident Evil. I'm going to try and balance my content with covering other franchises too, such as King of Fighters, Celebrity Deathmatch, Mortal Kombat, and so many different games from the original Xbox and PS2 era. And I know you'll be entertained with these big projects on the way. Anyways, stay safe everyone, and remember to have an awesome day.